And welcome back. Here we are. It is the NCAA Championships. It is finally here. This should be a fantastic, fun filled meet. It is an Olympic year, and the Olympic conversation has really picked up and been very fun, especially after this past weekend. We saw Oblique Civil of Jamaica beat Noah Lyles in the 100 down there in Jamaica. So the conversation online has really picked up. We saw Jakob get beat by Josh Kerr kind of again. But this is going to be a fun summer. I am so looking forward to it. It's like track and field. It's going to get turned up 1,000. So that's an exciting thing. But this video today will be all about the men's preview, and we have a dynamic men's competition. Not just the team title battle, but the individual battles that have been developed from the indoor season to the outdoor, and even for some of our distance runners from cross country even till now. And so I look forward to recapping and previewing this meet with you. So let's get things started right away. We have our traditional four-leg format. And our first leg, as always, will begin with the sprints and hurdles. And we do have some very interesting races to talk about. Let's get things started right away with the 100-meter dash. And in this format, I will pick who the top two are in most races and who I think the dark horse is. And actually give a champion. And we'll, when we do our recap, we'll do a right and wrong. But in the 100, I kind of have it as Feather Ash of Auburn, because you can't ignore that 994 and his technique and his blocks. His start of the blocks is just so incredible. And also in the 100, I have listed as Louis Hinchcliffe of Houston. There are a bevy of other names in the outdoor preview. I did not expect for it to be these two, but here we are. I think Hinchcliffe, if we're picking between the two, is probably in the best condition. His 9.8 was barely wind aided, and I think he has 9.8 speed just in general. I think he can get there. Curious to see what happens with Ash. There was a moment in that regional race where it looked like he may have been grabbing his hamstring. Wasn't completely sure. He hasn't scratched. But we know that he's had a history of not always making the finals in some of the major meets. Let's hope that doesn't continue and he comes here ready to compete and healthy. And the dark horse I have in this race is the young man who finished second here last year, who's already gone under 10 seconds. That's Godson Ogini Brume of LSU, who had, some minor nicks early in the season, but seems to be kind of rounding into the perfect shape at just the right time. I do expect to also see him in Paris. I'm quite positive he's going to make the Nigerian team, which is going to be tough to make. Team Nigeria is going to be very strong on the sprint, specifically the 100. The depth there is up there with the United States, with Jamaica. They are a very strong team, and they're going to make a very serious push for 4x1 gold. I'm going to say that because I think they are a legitimate strong team. All those sub-10 runners in the open, with great exchanges, you never know what could happen. I think there's going to be a really rock-solid 4x1 competition come Paris. Moving to the 200, I have the usual suspects that I've had kind of all year long. Tarsus Orgard of Alabama versus Wanya McCoy of Florida, who to me has looked the best, which would be McCoy. His regional performance, he looked a lot more smooth running his 200, and it looked like running sub 20 was a little bit easier for him. The dark horse I'll have is Lance Lang of Arkansas. I just want to say this. I think this is the event where, even though I've named those gentlemen, I think there is a very strong possibility that none of them are the guy. That, to me, of all the sprint events, is the deepest and the most challenging. There's about 6 or 7 guys running sub 20, and all of them are capable of winning. I think, and Oregon didn't set the world on fire at regionals, and again, it is a qualifying meet. There is no regional champion per se. But looking at his races, he didn't look as smooth as McCoy did, but there were others who looked even smoother. The young man from Auburn, there's going to be a really good race, and I think we can't ignore Lance Lang. He's really having a phenomenal postseason. And this is probably the best we've seen him in that Arkansas uniform. He was phenomenal at Kentucky, made the transition, has been good in the 200, but been the top guy near the top. It's been a minute for him, and he's looked phenomenal. And we can't ignore he ran that 44 low split in the 4x4 at the SEC championships. He looked so good in that. Everyone was saying, who's going to tell Lane he's not a 100-meter guy? He's a 400 guy. And he may actually really be that, but he's looked phenomenal in the two, and I think he'll continue that at this meet. Now, moving up to the 400, I think this is probably, to me, the one where it has the strongest favorite. And that's Christopher Morales Williams of Georgia. We saw the 44-4 indoors. Because of blocks, he didn't get labeled a world record, but we can't take what we didn't see. And we've been expecting for him to be the guy to go under 44 this season, which lately it seems like that's what's needed to win. Either you're a 44 low or you have to run a sub 44 to be the champion. It's that type of deal now with the 400. There's a young freshman of Alabama, Samuel Ogazi, another talented young Nigerian sprinter. Keep an eye on that. And then I had the dark horses Judson Lincoln the fourth of Virginia Tech, who I've seen in person. And his 44.6 again looked smooth. And he looked really comfortable and relaxed at regionals. And I remember thinking he's going to lower his PR again. And he's not going to have to compete in as many events as he did at the ACC championships or even at regionals. He's going to have much fresher legs. So I think with just focusing on the 400, he could potentially scare Morales Williams in the 400. Moving on to the hurdles, this is going to be fun. We have three very talented hurlers, high hurlers. We're looking at in the 110, Devion Wilson of Houston, Jacoby Tharp of Auburn, the superstar freshman, and dark horse will say is Darius Luff of Nebraska. And I'm going to pick Wilson as the guy. I know Tharp has got that sub 1320, but I think Wilson is kind of ready to cement himself as the guy. He kind of was under the radar indoors because of the great performances we saw at Texas Tech. But outdoors, he's been just simply phenomenal and sharp, and so is Luff. But Jacoby Tharp is just, to me, the freshman of the year. And that's including Nick Harbor. And I think, we can't ignore what Nick Harbor has done out of South Carolina. But I don't think we're expecting Harbor, to be a threat. We are expecting Tharp to be a threat. He's listed here as a potential champion, not just a contender. We're no longer in just the contender phase. We're talking about those we think will be champions, and he's one of those that we think. So just as a recap for the 100, Louis Hinchcliffe. 200, I'm going to go with Wanye McCoy of Florida. 400, I'm going to go with Christopher Morales Williams from Georgia. The high hurdlers, I'm going to go with Devion Wilson of Houston. In the 400 hurdlers, you have Clement Dukas of Tennessee, Chris Robinson of Alabama. And I think, we can't ignore that although his time got, removed because he was DQ'd in that 400-meter hurdle race at the SEC, we can't ignore the fact that he ran a 47.6 and did technically, with our own eyes, witness him beat Chris Robinson of Alabama. And I think that that's something we can't ignore. And I think the dark horses, there's two, will be Caleb Dean of Texas Tech. He ran that really close to 48 points as possible. And we know he's got, of all the names we'll mention here for the 400 hurdles, he's probably the fastest when it comes to short sprint speed. So there's so much room for improvement with him. And then you have Nathaniel Ezekiel of Baylor, who has been quietly dominating the Big 12. And that does include him beating Dean, but what I saw out of Dean at the regionals lets me know he's in a championship form. And so is Ezekiel, but Dean did look really good. But for my money, my favorite is going to be Clement Dukas of Tennessee. I'm aware that Chris Robinson is the defending champion. I'm also aware that Chris Robinson is one of the fastest in NCAA history, but I cannot ignore Clement Dukas did beat him one-on-one at the SEC championships with an incredible time that got removed because of, I think, a small error. Moving to the relays, in the 4x1, I think it'll be LSU versus Houston. What a shock. I mean, we saw that video run round when it was the Texas relays time. And let's hope that LSU goes back to the Texas relays next year. I think probably one of the main reasons why they didn't go this year was because of the time frame and the fact that it was also a holiday. But my hope is that we'll see LSU back at the Texas relays, and I hope to be there next year to see this rivalry continue. I think it's so great. They're two very good schools in the 4x1. And shout out to Houston for actually improving because I saw them in person at the Penn Relays and I have had that video on this channel for a little while. They did not look as smooth as they do now. And we can't ignore the fact that both Louis Hinchcliffe and Sean Maswaganye have run sub 9-9 with barely win 8 at times. This is a very strong 4x1 that will really challenge LSU. And I think the dark horse is actually Auburn. And I know there's South Florida, I know there's the University of Florida, but I think the real dark horse is Auburn. I don't think we've seen the best of them yet. I'm still waiting to see them with because they have so many really good 100-meter guys. See them get that baton around the right way. And I think they're the strongest to challenge LSU in Houston. And then moving to the 4x4, I actually think it's a three-team battle. And it's the same three-team battle we saw at the SEC championships. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida. They're all sub 3-minute teams. Can't leave off Florida, can't leave off Arkansas, can't leave off Alabama in this discussion. And Arkansas is in the top school, and clearly, I think they've kind of taken the reins a little bit as the 400-meter school. Let's not ignore the great performances that they have recently been putting up, and even some of their pros. But Alabama, Arkansas, and Florida, and I think the dark horse is Texas A&M. They have a Ahmad Robinson, who on Anchor, and you've seen the video on this channel, just can show up and show out, and I think he will. Then we move now to our second leg, which will be the distance races. And let's get started with the shortest, almost sprint-like distance race, and that's the 800. This is probably the most challenging, though. And I'd still have Sam Whitmarsh of Texas A&M, and I think he's going to be challenged solely by Darius Kipiego of Iowa State. I think those are the two best 800-meter runners that we've seen consistently this year, and I don't think it'll change. And I think that the dark horse is a former NCAA champion in the mile, which in the 800 rather, is Yusuf Bizimana. I'm waiting to see what he can do. He looked very good at regionals, a lot more relaxed. He did not look out of it, and he looks to be in better form as of now. Championship season, we're seeing a championship style runner. And it's going to be a tough and tight race. I think we're going to get a 144 again. We can't ignore the 144 Whitmarsh ran early in the season. That was a great time. So I'm really kind of hoping to see that from him again. In the 1500, we have a defending champion as my favorite, Nathan Green of Washington. That's who I'm going to pick. And in the 800, I'll recap that and say I think it's Whitmarsh. But I have Nathan Green versus Colin Solomon of Arizona, excuse me, Northern Arizona. The dark horse being Ethan Strand of North Carolina, with Nathan Green winning it. This is a great trio, and I think this is going to be a fantastic 1500. Nathan Green has a bit of bravado to him. You see in that picture, he's celebratory. He's got a lot of good energy. But Colin Solomon, I think, is kind of the guy that's kind of been maybe a little bit ignored because he is kind of under the radar. Nathan Green has got all the eyes on him because he's the defending champion. But Colin Solomon really is going to threaten Green, and I think so with Ethan Strand. But I'm going to stick with Green. And also to recap the relays, I'm going to go with 4x1 being LSU and 4x4 being Arkansas. In the 5,000, you have Brian Musa of Oklahoma State versus Parker Wolf versus of North Carolina versus Hepton Samuel, the freshman of New Mexico. Those are the three big names. But then there are two dark horses. Yes, there's 5 men mentioned here. You have Kai Robinson of Stanford. Can't believe the defending champion is a dark horse, but he's not been the Kai Robinson we're used to. But remember, he's got Olympic dreams, so his season probably did not start, and he's been running a lot fewer competitions, more than likely to have fresher legs for the long haul, because he's not doing a 5K, 10K double that he did last year. He's only running the 5K. Then you have Nico Young of Northern Arizona, and I hate to have him here as a dark horse, but he hasn't done anything to really blow us away this outdoor season. He did all of that indoors. Nico Young has had the indoor season of his life with finally adding some championship hardware to his trophy case. But Brian Musos looks so good, and so is Parker Wolf. Parker Wolf I saw in person, and I just was so impressed. And I've shared this twice since being at the ACC championships here. It was a phenomenal 2.5 laps where it looked like he was literally just sprinting all out. He looked incredible, and he is my pick to win the 5K. With much respect to Kai Robinson and Nico Young, I just think Parker Wolf will be that guy. In the 10K, you have Alex Phillip of North Carolina versus Patrick Kiprop of Arkansas. And then I actually have a dark horse, Victor Kiprop of Alabama, but I think it'll be Alex Phillip of North Carolina as the winner. North Carolina's having a year of all years when it comes to the distance guys. They have a threat in the 15, the 5, and the 10K. I think the only thing left for them to really develop is great group of 800 runners and a steeplechaser, and then they'll have a full set of phenomenal distance runners. But I think Philip is the guy. I don't think we can ignore Kiprop, either Patrick or Victor, but I think Philip is, to me, top tier. And our last distance event we'll look at is the steeplechase. You have Nathan Mountain of Virginia versus Abdul Hakim Abu Zahir of Eastern Kentucky, which has become the school for steeplechasers. I mean, they had, what, 5 guys that qualified for regionals? Ooh, that school is loaded in this event. Great program development, and hope things continue there at Eastern Kentucky. But I think he is, you know, the guy. Let me back up. I'm going to say Nathan Mountain of Virginia because what I've seen in person. Mountain is insanely talented and shows up always. And I'm going to put the dark horse as James Corrigan of BYU, so I'm going to stick with Nathan Mountain of Virginia. Even on my notes, I have Abdul Hakim. I have talked myself out of this recording with you all. I think it'll be Nathan Mountain of Virginia. And so when we do our check back, this will be an interesting discussion. Now moving to the third leg, we'll look at the jumps. And woo, this should be interesting because this is going to have a heavy impact on the team title battle because so many of the teams competing for a national title as a team are going to rely on their field event athletes to kind of score big points. The first one we'll look at is the high jump. You have Tyus Wilson of Nebraska and James Snowden of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Those have been the two most consistent jumpers, specifically Tyus Wilson of Nebraska. And I've said this on this channel many times this year, in fact, that to me, Nebraska is the best technical program when it comes to track and field. Regardless of whether it's track or field, they teach the technique, which is not something a lot of schools do well. They may rely solely on the talent, but Nebraska is very good with teaching. And Tyus Wilson, we've just seen be such a technically sound high jumper. The dark horse in this race is the indoor champion. That's Romaine Beckford of Arkansas. He's not wowed me the way those two have. Yes, he has an SEC title, but I think Tyus Wilson and James Snowden have had better outdoor seasons. And I'm actually going to go with Tyus Wilson as my choice. In the pole vault, a little disappointed, and I was relying on the great pole vaulters from Akron, and neither of them made it. That's disappointing because they did not show up well at the indoor championship, and here they are outdoor not showing up again. But you know who has showed up? Keaton Daniel of Kentucky, so we can't ignore him. And I think his biggest challenger will be Seaman Gooderson of Duke. We know his brother, Sandre Gooderson, and they were both at Princeton last year. He's now at Duke as a grad student. So let's, bring everything together. Sandre was a much more accomplished pole vaulter, but I think after witnessing Simon in person and seeing him win the ACC championship in the pole vault, I think we can't forget he does have that championship family pedigree. But, and this is a big but, we cannot ignore Keaton Daniel. He has consistently shown up and hasn't gotten a lot of love. And I will say that specifically from this channel. So I was really, really hoping the Akron guys, I'm a Mac guy, would pull out. But Keaton Daniel has been consistent, and I think he is the champion. I'm going to put dark horses Connor McClure at Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech, man, are they not a school for pole vaulters? They consistently put out a bunch. And then we'll move to the long jump, where I think this is the most obvious champion. And I have Wayne Pennick of Arkansas, but I think Malcolm Clemens of Florida will be his biggest challenger. And Johnny Brackens, to me, of USC is the dark horse. Clemens did not show up to me at the SEC championship. On his home field, for him to not beat at least number 2, when he's listed number 2 nationally, I was a little disappointed because I'm like, I really want to see you challenge Wayne Pennick of Arkansas. But I think it's really just Wayne. And I say that every time I preview something and he's involved in it because he shows up every time. Specifically this year, he's just been unstoppable. I have let go of the hope of seeing a 28-foot jump this season from a collegiate athlete, but I think he'll jump high 27. In the triple jump, Russell Wilson of Miami versus Jeremiah Davis of Florida State versus Brandon Green, the number one guy in the nation of Oklahoma. I think those are the three best. Robinson gets a lot of love from me because I love seeing his development at Miami, and I watched him in person at the ACC championships. And Jeremiah Davis got things started early, and Robinson's last jump moved from towards the bottom of the rankings all the way to second. But his performance at regional says he's ready, and I think this is where he wins again. He won indoor, and I think he's going to win outdoors. I have Sean Dixon Bodie of Florida, and Florida's relying on him as well to score points. Um, and I don't think we can really ignore Brandon Green because he's the only he was had the number one ranking for so long, and he's the only one on this list that has held it for what, a month. I can't ignore Brandon Green, but I really really do think it'll be Russell Robinson of Miami. And then in the decathlon, we have our defending champion and our NCAA record holder. And our defending champion, Leo Neusbauer, has been the guy, for a year and a half now. And he's just been simply phenomenal. The NCAA record holder, showing up in many events. He's even qualified in the discus. Only thing I think that's missing from his game is putting up, some great hurdling marks because he is such a fast, tall sprinter. I just assume that he will eventually get the hurdling down, but I don't think he breaks his NCAA record. I think he is, doing what he can to win because I think his focus will be Paris, and I think he's a medal threat. And I don't say that lightly, but I do legit think he's a medal threat for Germany in the decathlon. Germany is very good with the multi events, and he's the next guy. I think his biggest challenger will come from Heath Baldwin of Michigan State. And in this event, I don't think there is a dark horse because I think it's just them two. Baldwin making the transfer from Michigan to Michigan State a few years ago, this was clearly the right decision. He has shown up and has consistently gotten better each year, and he has just been a high level performer. He, to me, is the only person that can threaten Neusbauer, and if he wins, it'll be a somewhat shock, but not a complete one, because I'm like, he is Heath Baldwin. He has performed and scored at a high level. Let's not ignore that. Now, our anchor leg will be the throwing events and the team title battle. And we have some names that we have consistently mentioned on this channel that'll be competing for titles. And right away, we look at the shot put, and our guy, Tariq Robinson O'Hagan of Ole Miss. And then you have the two South Carolina throwers, Dylan Taggart and Christopher Licata. Those three are just have been, continuously near the top. They show up every chance they get, and I don't think it'll be any difference come this weekend. I really do think it's those three. The dark horse I do have is Alexander Koznikov of Georgia, but I think he's kind of on the outside looking at those guys. But I think this is an event where there is a dark horse, and my pick is going to be Tariq. In the discus, we have Francois Prinsloo of South Alabama versus Demetrios Pavlidis of Kansas. I think Prinsloo is kind of, ahead of the field, especially since the field has shrunk. We had some athletes pull out of the discus, most notably the defending champion Claudio Romero of LSU. I'm upset that I missed that in our regional recap for athletes who didn't make it. I did not even catch that. I just foregone conclusion that he qualified because they LSU had such a great regional performance. He was the one knock, and that's a shock. That leaves this event wide open. But those two are there, and for the team title battle, I think the dark horse is Kai Chang. Um, Kind of up and down indoors as a thrower. Outdoors, not so much down. Very much up. He's been a high scorer, and I think he'll continue that here in the hammer, which is my favorite throwing event of the year because I think we have two very dynamic hammer throwers, but then we got a defending champ that we've kind of not given enough love to since the indoor championship when he won the weight throw. So in the hammer, I have Rowan Hamilton of California versus Trey Knight of Cal State Northridge. And I think it will be Hamilton of California, but I can't ignore Kenneth Ikiji of Harvard, who's the defending champion. Hamilton, to me, has just been on a different level this outdoor season. just been a consistent high performer regardless of who he competes against. And I think that'll continue. I think Ikiji and Knight will give great performances, but I'm going to put my money on Hamilton. And for the discus, I'm going to go with Pavlidis of Kansas. In the javelin, Mark Milancello of Georgia versus Chinichiram of Prosper Namdi of Baylor. Those are two very good javelin throwers, and they've been having a year. Both. you know, Namdi kind of popped on everybody's radar. He reminded everyone at regionals, like, hey, I'm still here. I'm still one of the top guys. Did you forget? I think we kind of did. So here's this performance. Take that. And he kind of gave it to us with great regional marks and even a great Big 12. Mark Manicello of Georgia has been the guy, but the dark horse, Zuriel Rodrigo of LSU. This has kind of been his thing. Why does he show up under the radar? Maybe that's just a mistake on my end, but like, he has two national titles. Not one, two. He won as a freshman, one as a junior. He got third as a sophomore, but he kind of hangs on the radar, and then come championship time, boom, he's putting out big marks. He's the dark horse, but I really am going to go with him, surprising you all, picking the dark horse to win it. Even though Mark Benicello and Namdi have better marks this season, Rodrigo keeps winning at this meet. He already has two. What's to stop him from getting a third? I don't think it's either Minicello or Namdi. Man, he just keeps flying under the radar. And for the team title battle, I have it between Texas, Florida, and Arkansas. I think those are three teams. I didn't really want to leave out Texas A&M, but I just can't ignore the strength of Texas, Florida, and Arkansas. All three schools rather, have a lot of entrance, and Texas is the lead. And although the only event where we're expecting them to win is the decathlon, they have enough to score if things fall in their favor in a lot of events. They can kind of pick points up in so many places. Now, the two teams that are going to be relying on multiple championships, is Florida and Arkansas, but they have several opportunities. Florida is very strong in the sprints this year, and they have great jumpers. Arkansas, they're going to be really, really strong in the distance. They're very strong in the jumps, but they do have a solid sprint core. I mean, we have Lance Lang as a threat in the 200, and their 4x4 is the best. So if all things, you know, fall to the 4x4, if you're Arkansas, you probably feel a little bit more comfortable than Florida. Had it been last year, definitely would have been the Gators. Because, again, they set the NCAA record. They had a 250-17. And I think it's going to take a 258 or 257 performance, probably 258. I don't think the NCAA record is in jeopardy. I say that with, gritted teeth, like, ooh, I could be, having to walk that back. But right now, I'll say no NCAA record in the 4x4. I think the battle is between Texas, Florida, and Arkansas, and I'm actually going to go against my favorite team, the Florida Gators. I think it will be Arkansas. Whenever you have a strong 4x4 and you have a bevy of spots to pick up points, they're going to pick up points in the jumps. They're going to pick up points in the distance events. They're going to pick up points in the sprints. They're going to pick up points in the hurdles. They're going to pick up points in the relays. They have way too many opportunities to just pick up points from everywhere. And I think that's what they will do. So that is our men's preview. I think this will be a fantastic meet. I look forward to doing the recap with you all come either Sunday night or Monday. So I may not wait till Monday because we got a lot to talk about after this meet. And I'm even going to be even more riled up after the first day. Wednesday is, semifinal day. The only finals are some field events and then the 10K. So we'll see where we are team title wise come Wednesday night. But thank you guys, as always, for your support. And look forward to chatting with you. Please like, subscribe, comment. Your feedback is always welcome. I look forward to discussing with you. Thank you again. And our next video will be the women's preview.